Alright. Namaste. Namaste. I'm gonna talk about my encounters with the Pleiadians. I'm gonna jump right in to my first encounter. In this embodiment, at least. When I say encounter, I mean an encounter or a meeting or communication accessible to my human consciousness, because otherwise I am sure that we're in permanent touch, living contact always. And I don't think this is true just for me, but for all of us. We're never out of touch with our family, even when we don't remember. So on this occasion, it's a couple of years ago, I'm sure I could find the datum, but 3-4 years maybe more than that. So I was, the physical body was left on Gaia, or the most roughly vibrating body, but I was flying very quickly, but also comfortably and peacefully. I like fast flying and fast driving sometimes, fast traveling sometimes. So this was a very quick travel, but also comfortable, and I had time to scrutinize, to see the ship that I was approaching. And it was a white, disc-shaped ship that I might call a scout, or a medium-sized, in this traditional shape, resembling a disc, round circumference, possibly with some slight protuberations or round windows, and the height or thickness of the disc in the center was about 1/3, very approximately, of its diameter, with gentle curves and no sharp edges anywhere that I could see. I wouldn't call it a mothership as such, but certainly not a small craft for very brief missions, rather a comfortable mid-size vessel, homey. And the picture that I drew is not quite exact. The ship was more round, more not that there were no edges that I managed to draw on that picture, and maybe more windows, for sure more windows. My first reaction when I found myself inside the ship was, I'm finally here. And it was a great relief. I knew that that's where I'm supposed to be, but I realized immediately how silly, in a way, that statement is, because everything happens always at the right time, so there's no finally. It's a human sensation, and it's the ego talking, the character pattern, as Alan Watts calls it. But it served, so I realized how silly it was what I said, and we all started to laugh, and that was the best initial communication icebreaker, and a divine form of communication, laughter. So it's a ship for about 7 to 13 people. I had a sense of about 11, 12, 13 entities, but it could have been 7 or maybe 8. 7 feels right. And 13 could live there comfortably, I think. Apparently they don't seem to spend all their time in their physical bodies, so that's also why the ship is so small. They don't need all that much comfort. And I'll talk about the ship later. So this family provides me with help, support, information, friendship, company, healing, and even a sort of physical or semi-physical contact and touch. The information includes free energy information, of which I will talk more in the full version of this video, although don't expect any manuals or blueprints. It's a bit deeper than that and simpler. So When I was approaching the ship, I didn't know how important this contact was gonna be, but on some level I did know. We know ahead of time there is no time. That's why it felt so great, I think. But I knew what was going to happen. It's a poor sort of memory that only works backwards, as the Queen said to Alice. So the warm humor and hilarity indeed at times, and friendliness and the homecoming atmosphere, the as if I never left feeling was very important. And the laughter is so important. Now the healing that I get there, and guidance, yeah. And there was absolutely no any kind of doubt about this being real, which doesn't happen always. So maybe, who knows, maybe this can help distinguish between a false encounter, I mean, with someone who doesn't necessarily have your best interests at heart, and a true encounter, soul to soul, heart to heart. Although, is there ever an absolute guarantee? I mean, the heart knows. So there is not, as I'm listening to what I'm saying, there is not all that much information about what they look like, and although I'll talk about it either here or in the full version, or I will talk more about the ship, but the main thing is the joy and the beauty of truth and love and true friendship and being with my family. All these things, what the ship looks like and what they look like even, so unimportant compared to this fulfilling and happy feeling and knowing and the added dimension of friendship, of love and joy across solar systems, across races, across universes, across dimensions and timelines. That seems so the most important thing for me. So the information, that's the information. That's the information. And that we are loved. And that we are important as people. Not egoic kind of important, but important. But this communication across races and away from Earth, and the diversity, that's what I enjoy. I see the beauty even in the vastness of the differences themselves. And so now to talk a bit about communication, there are so many forms that they communicate, images and packages even that they sort of ceremonially gave me for later. They had a shape and colors, and they were for unwrapping or unzipping later. And it's been months, and in some cases years, that some of the package has been unwrapping. Downloads, maybe one can call them. And I found also that this is not just me, that this happens to other people. So don't be surprised if this happens to you. But they communicate through symbols, through numbers, letters and shapes, emotions, healing, and signs drawn on the sky with the ship, or with some light. I'm pretty sure it's the ship. And with humor and laughter, and laughter, and more humor. And this is a healing and teaching and liberating and information conveying humor and laughter. Also in the full version I'll probably talk about more of the ceremonial, ritualistic, symbolistic aspects of our encounters, because the encounters continue since the first one. And maybe I'll even compare it to other encounters with other races, such as even the reptilians or the spherical beings. So since the first encounter I just described very briefly, omitted quite a few things, my friends showed themselves to me on the sky whenever I asked at night. And this access to sightings on demand lasted for years and then was stopped. Mental or psychic connection is, of course, established every time I wish. And it's different every time, but always kind and loving and humorous. Another key aspect, again, for those of you who are interested in the shape of the ship and what they look like, well, I'll talk about that. But the most important thing is and just very briefly mention it, there's the equality, the attitude and approach of perfect equality in their dealings with me. And that's somehow for me very important. That's something that's kind of different from the planet Earth, where quite a few people are trying to be, so to speak, above others, better than others, cleverer than others, etc. This is honest and open communication with criticizing openly, but nicely, in a nice way, and with humor. Criticizing openly what I was doing, what I could be doing better, and appreciating very, very openly also what I've done well. So now about the ship. The ship is beautiful. Again, beauty is it's the main aspect. I mean, if you love beauty, then you can imagine whatever you like, and that's what the ship looks like. But of course, for me, it looked in a certain way. Just being on the ship, and especially with these beings, was the greatest thing for me. The joy and usefulness of the context and communication with these friends. So the ship itself and its features, and even the physical features of the okay, I'm not using the word aliens anymore, these are friends, was secondary to to what the ship looked like. But its beauty and harmonious design seem well worth mentioning to me now, as I find them to reflect the developmental stage of its builders and inhabitants, and their awareness of them being the source. I didn't go around the ship measuring and calculating, but I immediately knew or sensed that the golden ratio is the geometric essence in its design. In other words, love and enjoyment. The soothing, healing, blissful, enjoyable, harmonizing. I almost can't stop with the adjectives here. I wish you could see it in a way, you know. The golden ratio shapes all over the ship, inside and out, the pillars, the corridors, the windows. There's almost no decoration, or sort of inconspicuous, although it is there. But the whole ship is like a decoration, so to speak, a decoration of the universe, just as we can be when we live with the awareness of the source in us, so to speak. So this also shows me how important it is what we surround ourselves with. There's so much influence on our evolution, our ascension, our emotions, our feelings. So no need to calculate or measure, not often, even when we are creating things. We don't have to use the golden ratio with tools, but with love, things around us become more harmonious. More about this in the full version. Now, so the ship was kind of smallish in a sense, almost a hermitage, but comfortable and beautiful and homey hermitage. For me, hermitage is not something that's strict or poor. It's a comfortable, simple dwelling, harmonious, and that's what the ship was like, or is. And I lived in monastery cells in caves and on islands, and alone in nature, and I never felt there was anything liking there. I lived in palaces also, but I don't necessarily need them. I like simple. And so that's what I'm talking about, the ship. Very simple, almost frugal, almost small, but more comfortable and more beautiful than any palace that I can imagine or remember. But not nasty, not like some kind of prison camp or laborers housing or shelter, whatever. Not like that. It's just beautiful and comfortable. The comfort or discomfort also, of course, especially comes from who lives there, who perceives it, and who they know they are, not necessarily from the surroundings, but the surroundings adjust themselves, or tend to. The ship's white, beautiful and symbolic, white as the beings, or their light. I can see their features sort of meet the level features underneath the light. It took some time for me to see that. At first I just saw them as white figures, just pure white light. And after a few visits I became somehow more interested in the ship and in what they look like, what gender they are. They are both. And I mean, not hermaphrodites, but some of them are male, some of them are female, and some of them this is more expressed, and with some it's not so strongly expressed. But so I can see the features underneath the light, but actually the light is their identity, the way I see it. The physical coat is just a tool. It's more temporary than the light. The light is more essential. It's more permanent. It's more well, the word solid doesn't quite fit here. Of all the visits and all the messages, what seems to me also very important, or maybe most, is one of the visits was devoted specifically or greatly to something I wish to mention here, to give encouragement. They focused on conveying to me in very certain terms and very, very clearly, with their actions, especially toward me, toward my body, that I in that situation, but we as people are very valuable and very loved, very much beloved. And I'm not talking about value as in some sort of merchandise, but a very deep value and love. We are also heroic, undergoing great, huge, heroic tasks here. This is very important, what we're doing here, which is not to say that we shouldn't enjoy it and have fun, but it's a grand task, and we are very important beings. Again, not in the egoic sense, but we are very important and powerful. This was after I felt sort of tired after some difficult times here on Earth, and I sort of like dragged myself there to the ship. I can go there almost any time that I like, and they were very nice. I mean, they're always nice, but they were very nice to me, and did some healing on the body. And okay, I'm sort of almost afraid to use the word, but something like adoration, but in a nice sense, not egoic, you know. And I feel this is a message for all people, that we are beloved. We are just one of the beings of our family, or I don't like the word team very much, but a group or a work gang. We're just on the peak, the avant-garde. We are the ones that embodied on Earth, were prepared for it, and are still being supported by our family, our friends. So we are very important, which is not to say that they are less important, doesn't matter, but this is like an important task. There's a team sitting on the ship or somewhere, and we are actually in the fire. So it's not that we are more important than them, but this is a very specific task. It's perhaps not so easy to, while maybe they can change roles and one of them can take over when another needs resting, or we are here sort of solo in a way. So we are adored and greatly valued, those of us who are embodied as humans or animals or plants. Are they good or bad? Some people sometimes ask. The Pleiadians. This took quite a few visits after, and only after I got to know them better. They would tell me that they come from the future, and that as any race, they didn't always manage things as good as they're managing them now. We all make mistakes. And so they, in their past, also made mistakes. I was sort of beginning to idolize them, I think, and that's why they told me this, one of the reasons. But also that we all make mistakes, and it's possible to learn and to do it better. The mistakes are part of the learning process. It's absolutely fine to make mistakes, not to be used as an excuse. The humor sometimes is kind of tough. One day sort of like wanted to kick me off the ship, but that was a joke. But their jokes are never just jokes. There's always like a message or healing or learning behind it. So the message was that it really, of course they didn't kick me out and I could stay longer, but they conveyed the idea that it was good for me to leave at that time, because I was sort of like getting used to being on that ship too much, and in a way, and the heart connection that I have with them, or with myself indeed, is much more important than meeting our family in the flesh, or in images and voices. The connection here is what matters. So whether we go to ships or visit our friends in the body, or hear them talk or see their faces, it's beautiful, but the connection here in the heart, so to speak, it can be somewhere else, but it's in the center of myself or yourself. That is the main connection. That's what matters. Visits to ships or encounters, conferences, learning sessions away from the planet, great, very great, but not as important as being here. That's what matters. Details about projects are great, but everything follows this connection here, this beingness in the heart. I will leave it at that for now. Any technical details? But the beauty of the ship is that's just all the shapes, all the ratios. It's just so beautiful, and of course it's functional. I'm sure the ship is intelligent, and well, enough for now. Thank you for listening. Get the full version if you like. Namaste.